Hello all, we start where we left off in a new state and new territory. After packing up, we wasted no time to head into the Keep River National Park, the NT's answer to Western Australia's Bungle Bungles. Beehive rocks galore, stretching as far as the eye could see. We started the day with the search for more rock wallabies amongst the cliffs, but in the end had to settle for amazing views of the surrounding forest, interesting rock formations, and some more Aboriginal rock art. After our walk, it was time to head back to camp to another of Clayton's secret spots where we settled in for the night. The next morning, surrounded by cows, we spent a day on the road, only stopping for lunch on the Victoria River for a bit of croc spotting before making it to camp just outside Katherine. The next day, we head into Katherine for errands and onwards to Bitter Springs, where we had booked a campsite, a short walk from the springs themselves. Missing another slithery friend on the path, we arrived at the springs for a look around before back to camp for dinner, a hot shower, and a good night's rest. The next morning, we woke up early to beat the crowds and traced our steps to the hot springs to catch the steam rising off them in the morning. After finishing our morning coffee and warming up, we started our snorkel. Now, the camera, like most underwater shots, really doesn't do this justice, but this really was like swimming in a tropical river fish aquarium. We took in the little fish and turtles sharing the waterways with us. After a good morning soak, it was time to get back on the road north of Katherine to Nipmuc National Park, where we called it a night. The next morning, we set off early for our 12-kilometer hike to Butterfly Gorge, and once in the gorge, it became pretty evident why it was named after butterflies. Eventually, we made it to the end of the gorge for a well-earned dip, so after a paddle, a sunbathe, and a view were all enjoyed, we left a camouflaged python and archerfish face off and head back to the main gorge, taking in the dramatic views along the way. We did spy what could have been a massive black-headed python on the far bank down below, although you'll just have to take our word for it. Eventually, we did make it back to camp after a long day's walk. The next day, we set off early to enjoy Edith Falls, a beautiful multi-tiered falls into a large swimming hole dotted with islands. We checked out some of the smaller falls for frogs before swimming over to the main falls. Now, of course, with the big falls like this, I had to find out what was at the top, so headed up to take in the view and continue up over the second falls, where I found this beautiful grey-headed golden snake hanging out in a cave hunting frogs. Without wanting to piss him off too much, I clambered up the back way, triggering a kamikaze frog to hurl himself into the water below, and then back down the falls, across the water, continuing our journey as we overlooked the main pool, back to the car, and found ourselves a camping spot down by the creek where we called it a night. The following day, we attempted a more ambitious hike past Sweetwater and the lily pads to Sandy Pools, where we enjoyed a dip in the mid-morning sun and an explore, discovering fluffy lily flowers before walking back, tracing the stream, and enjoying the flowers before we made it back to the car. We then head back towards Katherine, making it through the smoke, fire, and flames to the cinema to catch Inside Out 2. The next morning saw us visiting Umbrawara Gorge, also known as Nature's Art Gallery. As we made our way deeper into the gorge down the creek, we were greeted by beautiful rock faces covered in all sorts of colours and textures in the sandstone, which had been slowly worn away, creating abstract paintings of reds and yellows covering both sides of the riverbank. We wandered down looking at the various wildlife, taking in the sounds and enjoying having the whole place to ourselves before heading back, scrambling over rocks towards the car, where we came across a beautiful water monitor chilling on the riverbank, who after a little while became curious about us and came over for a closer look. Then it was back in the car to find camp. On our journey, we found a little twiggy friend. Good luck finding him when he's not moving. And more smoke, which meant more fires burning in the dry forest, which we had at this point become a little desensitized to. After making it safely to the other side of a creek, we set up camp and called it a night. The next day, we went to visit the Territory Wildlife Park, a collection of all the top-end animal highlights. Starting strong with the iconic frilled lizard, we head to the Nocturnal House for a look at sugar gliders, possums, quolls, dunnuts, and various frogs, leaving just in time for the iconic flight deck show. Now, this was incredibly cool showcase of natural behaviors, with highlights being the tool use from a buzzard to get into an emu egg, and the impressive strength of an osprey diving into water to catch fish. We then slowly made our way towards the billabongs, where we came across giant freshwater rays, which were absolutely giant, growing up to 2 meters wide and 5 meters long, absolutely dwarfing the barramundi and tarpon sharing their pool. Next, we checked out the aquarium to check out some turtles, garfish, and a cool file snake. Our favorites include this hog-nosed turtle and of course the legendary salty, but more on these tomorrow. Next, we moved from the waters into things that fly, and no, not bugs, but birds. Loads of them. Everything from parrots to pigeons, finishing on a high with these technicolored disco finches. Final step of the day was a volunteer camp just outside of Darwin, so we got to work to earn our stay before relaxing in the pool and calling it a night. The next morning, we were up bright and early with the guinea fowl and head into Darwin itself, hitting a bit of novelty traffic for the first time in recent memory to get Pingu into the centre for his service. Once booked in, we decided to take a stroll to Crocosaurus Cove to see, you guessed it, the legendary salty. We saw little ones, big ones, spinning ones, and jumping ones. What really struck out is just how powerful their tails are. The slightest movement can make these guys turn without so much as a ripple or launch themselves out of the water. After watching the pros show us how it's done, we gave crocodile fishing a go with the little ones, and these guys can really leap. Next, we sat down for some lunch and a presentation on some of Australia's other scaly friends, followed by a little meet and greet with some of the stars of the show. With a little more time to spare, we head to an Aboriginal art exhibition before picking the car up and heading to our home for the next week. First day, in comfort, we spent fixing up the car, punctures repaired, indicators fixed, and awning and window foils installed. Other days were spent enjoying the various markets, food, and days on the beach, with the evenings spent joined by the various wildlife. To end our week in Darwin, we timed it completely coincidentally with Territory Day, a massive celebration celebrating all things NT. The evening started with the heaving night market before finding a spot on the dunes to enjoy the free concert and entertainment before the fireworks really kicked off. Boy, did they show up. Everyone with their phones out in anticipation, and with the tide all the way out, getting lit up by the absolute onslaught of continuous fireworks, they really spared no expense and lit up the night sky with explosion after explosion, literally ending our time in Darwin with a bang. Also want to end on the note that although Pingu may be big, there's always a bigger fish